What are the physiological effects of uranium exposure? We're taking a look at ATS-DR, the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. What did they find? Well, the majority of adverse health outcomes related to uranium exposure have been observed in uranium mine, mill, and fabrication workers. Outcomes that may occur with uranium exposure based on both observed human effects and animal studies include non-malignant respiratory disease, fibrosis, emphysema, and nephrotoxicity, elevated microglobuliin, Boone, non-protein nitrogen, NPN, glucosia, proteinuria, tubular degeneration lesions, and cell necrosis. And extremely high acute exposures have also been lethal due to renal failure from oral or inhaled exposure or pulmonary failure from inhalation exposure. And in addition, uranium overexposure by either inhalation or ingestion is associated with renal abnormalities regardless of solubility. However, there is some question as to whether the same psychotoxic effect to the kidney from exposure to uranium in experimental settings occurs in humans. Also, additional health effects involving the reproductive development systems and indicating potential neurological effects for uranium exposure have been reported at higher doses. And in the literature, more studies have been indicated for them. Also, the nephrotoxicity, experimental versus non-experimental, has raised some questions concerning the psycho effect on the kidney from exposure to uranium in experimental animal settings versus in humans. In one study of people drinking well water with high natural uranium concentrations, the median urinary concentration was 0.078 micrograms per liter. And here is a stable effect of uranium on calcium and phosphate fractional clearance was indicated with the normal range of these measures, but without the effect of other biochemical or traditional markers of renal function. In another study, uranium was measured in 193 people who used drinking water from drilled wells for an average of 16 years. Possible toxic effects of uranium on kidney cells and renal function were evaluated by measuring urinary N-acetylene gamma, N-D-glucosamidase, the alkaline phosphate, lactic dehydrogenase, gamma and gamma-glutathione L-transferase, serum cysteine C, urinary and serum calcium phosphate, glucose, and creatine. And the study concluded that uranium intake from drinking water, even at relatively high exposures, was not found to have psychotoxic effects on kidneys in humans. But does that mean it's safe? It's not known whether or not exposure to uranium in children is differently. No cases have been reported where exposure to uranium is known to have caused health effects in children. And very young animals absorb uranium more than adults do when fed uranium, but we do not know if this happens in children. It's also not known whether exposure to naturally occurring uranium can affect developing human fetus. In laboratory animals, extremely high doses of uranium drinking water result in birth defects and an increase in fetal deaths. So it's not completely safe. And we do not think uranium can cause these problems in pregnant women who are exposed to background levels of uranium in food, air, and water. There is no significant amount of information to suggest children are affected differently than adults when exposed to uranium. So, with that being said, does that mean it's completely harmless? Well, there are some indications saying that might not be as harmful. That being said, there's still a lot of evidence that it can have issues with kidneys and higher levels, and even cancer and other problems. That being said, it's always a good idea to periodically test your water for high levels of uranium.